The principal spread the papers across the table like evidence in court, copies of my online searches, drafts, submission timestamps. Except there was one problem: they weren't mine. Ethan's name was on everything, not because he wrote it, but because he'd used my login. When I said that, they looked at me the way adults look at a child who's gone too far with an excuse. Mom leaned forward, her voice shaking but sharp. "Check the handwriting. His notes. The pen marks. You'll see who copied who." Kellerman said my handwriting didn't matter because the work was entirely digital. Principal nodded along. Then she dismissed us with that tight professional smile. "We appreciate your concern, but this conversation is over." When we got outside, Mom cried. The kind of helpless crying you hide behind your hands. She knew what came next: detention, suspension, notes in my record. Eventually, humiliation so thick it would follow me through every hallway. After the hearing, everything at school changed. Whispers started. Someone taped a note to my locker that said thief in red marker. I stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria. Teachers looked away when I passed by. The week after, Kellerman announced Ethan had been chosen for a regional award. He called him an example of integrity and hard work. It felt like my lungs emptied out. That night, while trying to study, I got a message request on an old forum I used for research projects. It was an anonymous account. 3 words: "I know everything." The next day after school, a flash drive waited inside my locker. No note. At home, I plugged it into my computer. My hands were sweating. Inside were screenshots of chat logs, Ethan bragging to a friend about borrowing my files, explaining how his dad could cover it if I complained. There were also photos of my drafts uploaded weeks earlier, clearly with my name still on them. Whoever left the drive had proof stronger than anything my mother could have begged for. I printed everything and brought it straight to the principal. Her face changed from calm to nervous within seconds. She said she'd look into it immediately. But 2 days passed. Then 5. Nothing. Around the 6th day, Kellerman called me after class. He locked the door. His voice was different, low, careful, almost tired. "I know about the flash drive," he said. "You don't understand how much trouble you're creating. Ethan's father funds half the scholarships in this district. You need to drop it." I stared at him, waiting for any sign of shame. There was none. He said, "If you delete everything and keep quiet, I'll make sure your record stays clean." That was the moment something inside me broke, not the childish anger, but the last piece of belief that grown ups ever do the right thing. I went home and told Mom everything. She didn't yell. She just asked quietly, "Do you still have the flash drive?" We sent copies to the district office, the local paper, and the education board on the same night. A week later, everything exploded. The newspaper printed teacher accused of protecting board member's son. Kellerman was suspended pending investigation. The school board tried to contain it, but parents were furious: letters, protests, meetings. Suddenly, everyone wanted to believe me. Except by then, it was too late. Ethan withdrew from school, supposedly transferred. His father resigned. Kellerman retired without ever admitting fault. The investigation disappeared into politics. And me? My name was never cleared publicly. Teachers acted nice again, but in that cautious way people treat someone who might start another scandal. A counselor once told me to be thankful things worked out. They hadn't. They'd just stopped burning. Years later, when I applied to college, one of the essays asked about a moment that defined your character. I wrote about honesty and courage, the clean version. Not the real one, where courage feels like dragging your own reputation through glass to prove what everyone already knows but refuses to admit. I never found out who slipped that flash drive into my locker. Sometimes I think it was another student who got hurt and couldn't speak. Sometimes I think it was Kellerman's conscience trying to leak through guilt. Maybe even Ethan himself. Whoever it was, they gave me proof, but not peace. Because when an entire system decides one person's comfort is worth more than your truth, winning still feels like losing. And if I ever have kids, I'll tell them this. School isn't always about learning what's right. Sometimes it's just the first place you find out how easily people will choose who gets to be innocent. The promotion that broke me. I used to think racism was something ugly and obvious: slurs, violence, exclusion. The kind you see on camera, the kind you could call out. Then I learned how quiet it can be. How it can sound exactly like success. I was 32 when I got promoted. The company sent a mass email with confetti emojis and a subject line that said "Representation Matters." That should have been the first warning sign. I'd been at the firm 5 years, quiet, consistent, dependable. I wasn't brilliant, just disciplined. My parents raised me to believe hard work erased color. It doesn't. It just makes people more comfortable using you as proof that inequality doesn't exist. The week I became the first person of color to manage a regional team, I walked into the conference room and saw a poster with my face on it. No one asked to use it. Underneath it said, "Breaking Barriers Together." I held the promotion meeting that day. Half the staff were older white men who'd worked there longer than I'd been alive. They congratulated me stiffly, shaking my hand like they were touching something radioactive. One said, "We're proud of you, champ." Another joked, "Guess we're woke now, huh?" I laughed with them. Because that's what you do. The next months were pure exhaustion. Every meeting, every client, every email, I could feel eyes waiting to see if I'd fail. One senior manager said privately, "We know you'll handle the diversity optics." I didn't know what that meant until the next project. We were bidding for a big government contract to redesign public community housing. The marketing team built the proposal around me: minority leadership for minority spaces. I told them it wasn't ethical, the design barely included green zones, the budget cut off half of what the community needed. They said, "That's why your presence matters. It makes them trust the brand." It took me 2 sleepless nights to realize they didn't promote me because I was good. They promoted me because my skin tone made exploitation look like inclusion. Still, I stayed. Told myself I could use the position to help, that I'd make small changes quietly. But quiet doesn't work when you're surrounded by people who depend on your silence. One day, a new junior architect joined, a young black woman named Trina. On her first week, she asked me, "Do you like working here?" I said yes before my brain had time to think. She smiled, believing me. That hurt the most. About a month later, she came to me almost in tears. Someone had told her she got hired only because of quotas. She asked if I'd ever heard that. I lied again, said, "No one thinks that here." Then she told me how a supervisor had given her drawings back covered in red ink with the note, "Tone down the black aesthetic." I filed a report for her. HR thanked me for modeling allyship. Nothing changed. The supervisor still had his job. Trina got transferred for better mentorship opportunities. I tried to quit twice. My director kept offering more responsibility, bigger bonuses. He called me a fighter, an inspiration. The guilt became a second heartbeat. Then, last summer, the company hosted an internal documentary celebrating 10 years of community innovation. They asked me to speak on camera. The producer said, "Tell us your success story." So I did. But not the one they expected. I talked about Trina. About my neighborhood. About the housing proposal they'd used me to sell. About how my face had become a mask for their conscience. I said, representation doesn't mean anything if it only exists to make power feel good about itself. The producer froze. Told me it was too emotional. A week later, the final cut came out, my speech edited down to 1 sentence. "I'm proud to make a difference." That was my breaking point. 2 days later, I printed my resignation and left it on the director's desk. He called me in, pretending to be disappointed. "You're walking away from real influence," he said. "No," I told him. "You already used it." I packed my box, passed the lobby poster with my smiling face, and walked straight out the glass doors. It's been a year. I work with a non-profit now, designing housing the firm would have called unprofitable. My paycheck's smaller, but my head's quieter. Sometimes, when I see those glossy corporate ads about diversity and innovation, I stop scrolling. Because somewhere in that photo, there's always someone like I used to be, smiling, thinking they've made it. Not realizing they're just the shade of inclusion someone else needed to finish the picture.